Hello and welcome to Fertility Springboard, the podcast series brought to you by Fertility Help Hub. I'm Eloise, founder of Fertility Help Hub, and over the series I will be bringing you conversations with some of the most influential and inspiring professionals and experts around the world to arm you with useful and empowering thoughts and resources to ease your fertility journey. And don't forget to sign up to the newsletter to make sure you don't miss out on anything. It's packed full of inspiring interviews, resources, discounts and offers, competitions, and real-life stories. Welcome. Today I am speaking with Belle, who is from the UK but based in Dubai, and she is a mentor for mental health, bipolar and sexual trauma healing. Hi Emma, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not bad. It's raining here. It's probably much nicer weather where you are in Dubai.
It's nice, but touching on, 48 degrees. So it's nice, but we're still inside. We're inside.
Okay. I can only imagine. So we're going to be talking today about your personal diagnosis and your mentorship program and how you help people, and also talking about your own personal fertility journey. And you are currently in the 2-week wait after IUIs. So give yourself an introduction to everybody, and we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm Emma. I'm 39. I'm originally from Brighton, and I spent 4 years living in Switzerland prior to living in Dubai, and I've spent the last 2 years living in Dubai. I got diagnosed with bipolar 10 years ago, but the truth is I was I know I was undiagnosed from about the age of 15 really onwards. So I had all of the symptoms and the problems that it can bring into your life, and I didn't get diagnosed until I was 29, at which point everything just made sense, and all of my closest people around me just went, of course you are.
Can you tell us a bit about what those symptoms are?
So it's the extreme highs and the extreme lows. It's not how it can be portrayed, where somebody's just having a bad day and 1 minute they're happy and 1 minute they're sad, and then there's that flippant comment of, oh, are you bipolar? It's not that. It's more intense and more prolonged than that. So the periods of low are extended and the periods of high are extended, and they are quite extreme. So you've got the low part, which is depression, which I think nowadays, thankfully, a lot of people are quite familiar with, which is good progress in the mental health front, where people have feelings of hopelessness, helplessness. At its very worst, they can become suicidal, which I am familiar with and have felt and have been suicidal and actively suicidal just leading up to my diagnosis. Okay. And then you move into the hypermanic phase, which can look like, this is why it can go undiagnosed for so long, and misdiagnosed actually, because hypermania at the beginning can look like the person is super productive, bags of energy, doesn't need a lot of sleep, can get loads of stuff done. That one person could probably hold down 3 full-time jobs and absolutely ace it. And it really only becomes a problem when it starts to become a little bit more elevated than that, and they become irritable and impatient, and the world suddenly gets too slow for them. Everybody's too slow. I can remember feeling like this very often, and I still do from time to time, especially with my partner. so your thoughts become like rapid fire, and you can think and act so quickly. Now that doesn't always mean that it's good, but to you the world is too slow, and why can't everyone keep up? So it builds into frustration, irritability, anger, confrontation. It can lead you to being overtly sexual and flirtatious in your language, crass. It can then also lead to exorbitant spending, risky decisions, not thought out decisions. And then as it escalates more and more, it heads towards full mania, which is the diagnosis bipolar 1. So when you've got somebody who is diagnosed with bipolar 2, they range from depression to hypomania. If you have the diagnosis of bipolar 1, it means that you have experienced full-blown mania just once. It only has to be once for you to have that diagnosis in your life. And full mania can look like losing touch with reality, losing complete perspective, not having awareness, not having insight, full-blown psychosis, having grandiose ideas, suddenly believing that you're someone quite holy, paranoia, delusions, voices, hallucinations, all of those types of things. And it's different for everybody. So that's kind of the range. It's a very complex diagnosis because it affects everyone differently. But that is the range and the spectrum, if you like.
Gosh, it's so involved, isn't it? I mean, like you said, I'm sure that so many people hear of it and think, as you said, it's highs and lows and don't get the full scale and I guess how serious it can be and how it can lead you to, as you said, suicidal thoughts or actively doing something like that. So to have help and support must be, and also to have a diagnosis must be such a relief. So tell us more about your mentorship and also, I guess, your personal sexual trauma and how you help other people heal who have been there too.
Basically, I've spent a lot of my life in the corporate kind of managerial world, but through my own personal experiences, it has led me to a place where now I am that 3 steps ahead person for somebody who is suffering and struggling with bipolar, or is healing and trying to rebalance their life after sexual trauma. So I help predominantly women in both of those arenas, and I mentor them through making the right choices for themselves and finding stability and building a toolkit, to help build their resilience in their healing. So it's not avoidance, it's not pretending it has, everything's rosy. That's not what this is about. It's about getting real with the reality of our state and where the diagnosis of bipolar has left us and what we need to do, and to be empowered and taking charge of our mental health and not just being at the whims of the doctors and just accepting medication and accepting that that's your lot and that's all you can do on one side. And in terms of sexual trauma, building a resilient toolkit to help you navigate through trauma healing, because it is complex and there are so many different modalities that we can go down, but sometimes what we're not given is the day-to-day tools for self-management, and that's what I give and share within my mentorship groups.
Amazing. So we've sort of touched on this slightly, but you have suffered from sexual trauma yourself, haven't you? And so can you tell us a little bit more about how you've rebuilt your life and how it's led you to do what you're doing now?
For me, my sexual betrayal and the boundaries being crossed was at 17 years old with my uncle, is how it started. And I was sexually assaulted by him, but because I was a young runaway, essentially I ran away from home at 15, and I was the troubled child, if you like, and he was an upstanding citizen of the community. Unfortunately, I was not a credible witness, but my character was brought into question because I was the delinquent child. I was not stable. I was all of these things, and he was a stable, upstanding businessman and well thought of, and everyone loved him, and it just, how could he possibly do something like that? So unfortunately that kind of marred the court case that took place. And after that, it sort of sent me reeling, because in the 2 years leading up to the court case, I was attacked by people that he knew that were trying to protect him, because they thought that I had just made it up. So I had someone bite a chunk out the back of my arm. I got beaten up in the street. I had someone try and run me over, and this all just led me to such a chaotic place. And don't get me wrong, I was already in a chaotic place, which I believe is what left me vulnerable to the sexual assault happening in the first place, because I was estranged from my family, and I kind of adopted him as my father figure, the father figure I was kind of yearning to have but never got. So I thought I'd found it in my uncle. So it was through being in the vulnerable position that kind of happened, which as I've got older, I've since learned is common, that these things do happen when people are vulnerable. And that just sent me down a really wrong path, and I ended up in really bad circles, in really unsafe situations, and that led me to being very violently raped when I was about 19 years old. And consequently, I then ended up in a domestic abuse relationship for 2 years. So it was all a chaotic time, from the age of 15 leaving home to the age of about 21 really is when it probably all kind of stopped, and I just took a different turn and my life started to turn around.
Did you win the court case in the end?
Unfortunately not, no, because I think the Emma that was showing up to court at that time, I can see why a jury would have doubt about me. If Emma right now turned up to that courtroom, it would be a different story. But at the time, I was chaotic and I was completely unstable. But what I have also learned through learning more and meeting other people that have been in my position is that's not uncommon, that victims of sexual violence and sexual assault are in chaotic places, and that leads them to be vulnerable to these things happening to them, sadly. And it's just the sad reality of it.
So do you think there's any link between your experiences and the fact that you have bipolar and hadn't been diagnosed with it?
Not really, because I think the symptoms for me were presenting themselves from the age of 15. And I got misdiagnosed at the age of 16 with depression, because the problem with bipolar is sometimes you only present to a doctor when you're very, very low and you can't cope with life. But when you're hypomanic, it feels like you're doing well. So people don't tend to present to the doctors when they're hypomanic, because it can just be seen as you're really efficient, dynamic and acing it. So this can be a really common reason why it goes undiagnosed for such a long time and misdiagnosed.
Makes complete sense. Wow. And so how have you rebuilt your life since then? Obviously, you are a different person now, and I'm sure it didn't happen overnight.
No.
And where has that led to? Tell us a bit more about where you are now and what's going on in terms of trying for a baby.
So, I mean, the truth is I ran from everything that happened to me for a really long time, and I passed it off as healthier and healthier coping mechanisms. So from the age of sort of 19 to 25, I got lost in a lifestyle of too much partying and abusing my body in that way, which I now recognize was just escaping how I felt. And then that morphed into being a workaholic, and I went into the sort of corporate world and got managerial jobs, and I passed off my workaholic as just working really hard and being successful. But the truth was it was complete avoidance of everything that I needed to deal with. And then it went into being like an exerciseaholic. So I just morphed from one behavior to another, but it was actually all avoidant behavior. But on the outside, it looked good because I was no longer chaotic. I was working hard. I was in the gym 6 times a week. So to the outside eye, you know, I'm really successful now. But the truth is, I was running, and I was running so hard from sitting still, because the thought of sitting still was absolutely terrifying. So I had to fill every area of my life to avoid feeling.
I'm sure lots of people can resonate with that feeling. Like, even if you look back in hindsight and think, oh yeah, like listening to some of the stuff you're saying, I can see areas of my life where I have been similar in those kinds of feelings of, you know, it's not just about success, is it? It's like trying to manage everything and being on top of everything and having this front that you're on top of everything all the time. And it's exhausting.
Oh yeah, exhausting is exactly the right word. It is exhausting. And it's only when I stopped, and I really stopped, that I started to really heal and feel and heal and feel. And it comes in waves, and it's come in tranches, if you like. It's not like an overnight thing, you know, I'll take myself to a therapist and bang, I'm fixed. It's layers, peeling back those layers one by one, and you do a bit of peeling back, and then you need a bit of rest time from recovery work as well. It's not good to just be in recovery mode all of the time. Sometimes you do need a rest from recovery work, and you need to just be, and then something will trigger you, and that's another indicator for something else that you need to just kind of lift up and go, what's in here then? And it's just that, it's, you know, and then all of a sudden something, or you'll meet someone and they will bring up an emotion in you, and you have to really sit and think, what is this trying to tell me? Because it's nothing about them. Whatever this is about me. So then you have to think, oh Christ, I've got to lift up another one. So then you lift it up and you think, oh, what's under here?
Oh wow.
But do you see what I mean? But it's
totally
good, because you start to really sift and work through it and get real with yourself. And for me, that's where the really good stuff's come from.
Absolutely. And where are you? Well, we know where you are with being in the 2-week wait, but could you just go back a bit and tell us what's been happening on the fertility side of things since, I presume, you met your partner?
Yeah, so we've been together 7 and a bit years, and he is 8 years younger than me. So when I met him, we knew that obviously children weren't going to happen straight away. And to be honest, I was still running hard. So I didn't have time for children, didn't have time for periods, didn't have time for anything apart from working and gymming. And I was on the Mirena coil. So I was on the Mirena coil from the age of 19 or 20 right through to 39. So I had 1 in, 1 out, 1 in, 1 out, 1 in, 1 out. So I basically didn't have a period for the best part of 20 years. And I had my coil taken out last August, and was very lucky. I had a period within 2 weeks and was able to have all of my tests. Now, the reason that I had all of my tests straight away is this: 4 years ago, sorry, I need to hop back. 4 years ago, when we were living in Switzerland, I thought I might go and get some eggs frozen. So I went to a fertility clinic, not thinking for 1 minute I would have anything wrong with my fertility.
But what made you decide to do egg freezing at that point? Because it sounds like you were in a relationship at the time. And what were you, 35 at the time or 34 at the time?
I would have been 35.
So did you think that you just weren't in a place to have a child at that moment if you both wanted one?
That wasn't the right time for us. So we just weren't in the right space to have children at that time. And I thought, right, okay, maybe I'll go and look at getting some eggs frozen then. And because I didn't have a big desire to have children at that time, I kind of hopped in really naively, hop skip through the clinic door, get some eggs frozen, please. And they did some tests, and they said to me that my AMH level was very low. I didn't even understand what that was really. And that when the time came to having children, I would probably most definitely need some help. And if I wanted to freeze some eggs, that I would probably have to go through at least 3 rounds to get 9 or so eggs, because they only expected to get 2 to 3 eggs per round for egg freezing. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really understand what they were saying to me at the time. And because I wasn't actively trying for children, I wasn't devastated by the news, because I suppose I didn't have that yearning to be a mother at that time. So although I was like, oh God, that's not great, you know, to hear that when I want to have children, it might be difficult, I also didn't understand the enormity of what they were saying to me. So I didn't get any eggs frozen at the time, and just thought, when it's my time, we'll see what happens. What's meant to be is meant to be. Fast forward 4 years, take my coil out, my AMH has obviously dropped lower, and but it's a blessing, I think, that thing that happened to me 4 years ago, because I had my coil taken out. They told me that I might not have a period for 1 or 2 months. I was very lucky I had a period straight away. And I went straight into all the tests. So I just said, give me every single test, all of it. So to check for fibroids, blockages, all of that. So I had that done. I had all my blood tests done, had all the scans, and we knew exactly what we were dealing with. And my only issue, if you like, was my low AMH level, which at the time last year was 0.7. So she said, you need to, you know, give yourself at least 3 months to see how your body regulates after coming off of contraception and all of those things. So we waited 3 months, and then in the January we did our first ovulation induction. And again, very naively, just hopped into the process and got pregnant. So I was like, so really, I've been really naive to this whole process, because I just thought, well, this is just easy breezy. I don't understand why people are telling me it's so difficult. And then, of course, I would think I was 3 weeks or something from conceiving. So 3 weeks from conception, 5 weeks on the actual kind of pregnancy scale, if you like. And that pregnancy didn't continue. And that, for me, I think, is when the reality of this whole process kind of dawned on me, and what emotionally that would mean to me, and how this journey might start to kind of look for us, I guess.
So do you have any regret about not freezing your eggs in your mid-30s?
No, weirdly, right now, as I sit here today, my honest answer is no. And I think maybe that is because of how I view life in general. And that could be a product of some of the trauma that I've been through. For me, to place my energy in that space doesn't help me now. You know, I have to place my energy in a space that helps me today. And to waste my energy in any other area, it's okay to feel sad. And, you know, I have grieved in this fertility process, like in a way that I really didn't think I would. And I really have. But to have the regret, I definitely don't have. Have I had grief? Yes, I have.
And you mentioned that when you were looking at egg freezing, you thought obviously about having children, but it wasn't at that stage like a burning desire. Do you feel like, because time has gone on, like what's changed for you now to feel that you very, very much want to be a mother? Do you think it's because it's now more of a challenge? It's like the thought of actually not being given the opportunity that you thought was a choice of yours.
Yeah, so the truth is, I just didn't have the desire at that time. I've always known I wanted to be a mum and have a family, but go back 4 years, I just didn't have the desire to be a mother right there and then. And one of my biggest motivations in life for parenting, and this is probably a product of the upbringing that I had, and having a broken family and then a broken step family, and all of the other things that went on with it, with male figures in my life, was that until myself and my partner were totally in a place where we were absolutely engaged and ready to be parents, I simply wasn't even on my radar to go down that route. Because for me, going into parenthood, having two fully engaged parents, fully desiring parents, and emotionally, I know you can never be ready, but emotionally and intentionally walking into that space ready to change into being parents, not ready to be parents, but ready to embrace the change, it simply wasn't even going to be an option on the table for me. So for us, it was important that was all feeling right for both of us. And we got to that space, at the end of last year, middle of last year, end of last year, and we decided that we would get married. But COVID put a stop to that. But we decided that we would get married, and that we were ready to be, change our life and move into a family dynamic. And that's really as simple as it is. But then it's funny, now that we've decided that we are ready, that's where I suppose the news of my fertility, or reduced fertility, is now having the emotional impact. And that's, I suppose, is the bit that I'm now feeling on an emotional level that I just simply didn't feel before.
I totally understand. And the process so far has been IUIs, is that right?
So we did one ovulation induction, which we fell pregnant, then the pregnancy didn't continue. Then we did another ovulation induction, which didn't work. And then another ovulation induction, which didn't work. All of those ovulation inductions were done with Clomid, FSH injections, trigger release, timed intercourse. Then we moved on to IUI, and we again had medication, FSH injections, and trigger release, and then the insemination. That didn't work. And then we moved clinics, and the doctor said we're going to do one more IUI, because in her opinion she would have done the process slightly differently. And if this IUI, which we're currently in, doesn't work, then we will move to IVF. So this IUI has been done using Femera, which I haven't had before, FSH injections, trigger release, and then the insemination, and then the progesterone vaginal gels. And now we're in the 2-week wait.
Wow, everything crossed for you. And so what do you think helps you, and who supports you? Tell us a bit about the good and the bad days that no doubt everyone has felt listening.
In terms of fertility, I actually found a really great group on Facebook, actually, called Parental Hope, I think it's called. I've actually found a lot of support in that space, which has been really nice. And a few ladies are in their 2-week wait, so I've kind of connected with them. I've connected with a lot of people on Instagram, including yourself. I just had no idea there was such a community out there of people all connecting over the internet.
You need to come and join Fertility Squad, my new app, because there are so many people at similar stages talking about it and what helps them, and just as you said, mentorship and talking about the highs and the lows, and just knowing that other people out there are feeling the same things.
Yeah, please. And just I just had no idea that there was such an amazing community of people on the internet who are all in this kind of fertility journey. And I suppose it's not until you get in it that you realize just how many people are in it. So since opening up about it on my social media, I've been really overwhelmed with how many people who, on the face of it, I mean, social media is terrible for this, isn't it? But on the face of it, they've got 2-3 children, everything looks rosy. Well, these are, and you would never have thought that they've gone through this trauma and heartache and turmoil to get to being a family with children. And since opening up about it, I've had so many come to me and say, we had IVF and we did this and we had, X amount have failed this. And it's just interesting that when you open up and you realize how many other people have walked the journey that you're now starting to walk. And I've just been met with nothing but love and kindness, and I'm just really grateful.
Amazing. And so what would your, just to finish, what would your sort of takeaway advice or thought be?
For fertility?
Yeah, and I guess general mental health and well-being.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the best piece of advice I could give anybody, and I have to say this fertility journey has tested my mental health, is to feel and to get in touch with your feelings and to find a way to connect with how you really feel, and don't avoid how you feel, because in avoiding how you feel, we store it. You store it all in your body, and you can pretend you're okay, but your body will know different. So you can pretend all you want that you're okay, but you store it inside, and it might not come out in a way that you recognize as holding on to emotions, but I promise you it doesn't just disappear. So processing how we feel is just so important, and creating yourself a safe way to do that is absolutely essential, especially if you're moving from round to round. What you don't want to do is carry the last round with you, all the, feel it, grieve for it in that moment, sob, wail if you have to, do whatever it takes. None of it's wrong, everything's okay, as long as you're feeling what you feel and letting it move through you and out of you rather than storing it.
I think that's great advice. Thank you, Emma, and thank you so much for your honesty. And listen, everything crossed for test day and the future. And it's been great to speak to you today.
Thank you so much.